Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Around this time of year is when people start to look for therapists. There are many reasons as to why, but I do consider the change in seasons being something that contributes to wanting to find someone to help process your challenges, interrupt challenging behaviors, that kind of thing. The days are shorter, you wake up in the dark, you go to sleep in the dark, and it just feels like life isn't that exciting. And so you have a lot more time to think about the things that have been bothering you over the summer or previous to the summer. So this video is just going to be a quick rundown of some of the tips that I think are really important to help you to find a therapist. And I'm talking about therapy if you are able to choose your therapist. So if you're going for private practice, then that's usually helpful. There are some organizations that will allow you to state your preferences, but that's not really what we're talking about today. Okay, so if you are looking for a private therapist, these are some of the things that I think are important to think about and how to prepare essentially for having a fruitful conversation. The first thing is thinking about the type of therapy that you are looking for. There are many different approaches to therapy, but not every approach is suitable for every person. There's things like CBT, there's psychodynamic, there's person-centered, and to the average person, these mean absolutely nothing, except there are different ways in which people work with you or would work with you to get you to where you want to get to. The important thing is to think about what it is you're hoping to get from therapy. So, for example, with CBT, it's not very focused around the root of the issue. It's more focused on the things, the presenting behaviors, and how you want to interrupt that cycle. So you may not go, so you're not likely to go into detail about, your childhood or anything like that. Psychodynamic is probably the opposite. It might not give you specific tools that you say, yep, I definitely, can do X, Y, Z when I start to have negative thought patterns or whatever it might be. But you will more than likely get to understand the root of the challenges, and you spend a lot of time exploring what happened in childhood. And that isn't the only place that you spend time, but it is about past focused. And humanistic or person centered is a lot of the time focused around what's happening in the present, what's happening now, not too much focus on childhood and unconscious processes like psychodynamic would be, but it's still very helpful. So there are also therapists who have been trained, like myself, in using different tools to kind of work with you in the most effective way. So there may be times that, for example, for an integrative therapist, that they use CBT, a CBT approach with you. There may be times that they use a psychodynamic approach. There may be times that they're very person-centered. There may be sessions or times that actually they notice that you need more of a different kind of approach that maybe will be more helpful to you to get you to where you want to get to. It's important to think about that. And I would say personally, I've always looked for a integrative therapist because I'd like someone who doesn't only work in one way, because I think all of the approaches have their own limitations, their own great things about them, but also their own limitations. So someone who's able to work across multiple, and it's not to say that every single session will be different or anything like that, but they have a knowledge of those things, is something that I found really important for me. The second thing is not to put too much thought into the search. There have been people that have called me and I said, "Oh, so what interested you in like finding in calling me essentially?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I just liked your picture." Go by how you feel. Go by what the profile says. Are the things resonating with you, or is it really a bit like this person doesn't seem to be talking about what challenges I'm having in particular? So don't put too much thought into like I said about the approaches and those kind of things. It's important to have those in the back of your mind, but go more by how you feel reading their profile. Also think about your budget. That's really important as well. Like there's no point really approaching someone who is advertising their session fee being double what you are able to offer, even though there are sometimes it's worth exploring with that person, but only if they really say that there are concession slots available. That's really important as well. In your search, I would definitely say it's good to maybe find about 2 or 3 different therapists. That's probably the most, and that's because if you have more options, then you can kind of go from there. plus taking into account more practical things that not all therapists will match your availability, not all therapists will be someone that resonates with you and you with them, and also just thinking about, yeah, like the things that you're wanting to work on, are they able to work with those things? The third thing is that where possible, ask for an intro call. And this isn't for a free therapy session. This is really just so that you can hear their tonality, think about how you feel talking to them. And this call is usually about figuring out the practical things, like I said, about availability. Are you looking for online or face-to-face sessions? Um, what kind of things are you looking to work through? Have you ever been to therapy before? Those kind of questions, which is really helpful in figuring out, like I said, for you, figuring out how it feels to talk to that person. But for them, a lot of the time, it's figuring out whether they have the capacity and are able to work with you with the things that you are, struggling with at the moment. The fourth thing is, if you are going to have a call with the person, or if it's your initial session, plan time before to kind of get into the zone, and plan time afterwards, because it's very, very important for you to think about how you feel in that call. I can't stress this enough. It's not easy to find a therapist because there's these it's still a relationship. So it's like kind of like figuring out like dating. It's really strange in a way. But you're trying to find someone that you feel safe enough with to go into detail about the things that you find difficult. So take your time and be as intentional as possible. So if you can plan time before you speak to them for your first session or for an intro call or whatever it might be, then I would definitely recommend it. And I would also plan time afterwards so that you can reflect on how the call went. Think about what's going on in your body. Have a notepad and pen. That's something that I always recommend to people, because there's conversations going back and forth. The conversations going back and forth, and you might miss certain things. But if you have a notepad and pen or something like that, it means that you can reflect back on certain key points that are important to you. Another thing, actually, off of my list, is really important to think about what it is that you want from therapy, as I mentioned, but to write down a list of those things and write down questions that you may want to ask that therapist. Okay, so it might be about their training, might be about their experience of working with people who are presenting challenges like yours. It might be, their own life experience. Not to say that they're going to tell you, because some people won't say, but some people will handle that kind of conversation very eloquently. And if they're not willing to share anything personal about themselves or whatever it might be, they'll usually be able to explain why. And I would say that's a really, really good indicator as to how that person would work with you, because the whole point is that you feel comfortable to bring things that are difficult, even if it means that you might be bringing something that could upset them or make them feel uncomfortable. You should feel essentially open to ask any question with your therapist, eventually, even if it's not something that's a standard, this is about me kind of thing. But yeah, so keep that in mind. The fifth thing, the final thing, is being honest. I know it's really hard because I've been there. Being honest with your therapist, even if they're not currently your actual therapist, is super, super important. The reason why is because it kind of sets the foundation to how you're going to end up working together. If in the beginning of the conversation you're not sharing actually the things that you know are bothering you, because subconscious thoughts and things aside, the things that you know are a challenge, whether it's relationships, whether it's unhelpful thought patterns, whether it's work, whether it's friendships, whether it's romantic relationships, whether you are questioning your identity, whether it's racism, whatever it might be, bring those things, tell them those things. These are the things that I'm struggling with. These are the things that I want to understand more of during our time together. How do you feel about those things? Because it prepares the relationship. It means that they can step into it knowing, okay, this person wants to work on XYZ, and you get a good indication about how it feels when you present those kind of things, those kind of topics, and say, yeah, these are the things I want to work on. The bonus thing I would say, so one more thing that I can think of is just considering that regardless of any point that you get in therapy, you don't have to continue if you don't want to. So even if someone says, yes, I would like you to, sign up for an initial 6 weeks, which is absolutely great. That's a great amount of time to stick with a therapist before you decide whether you love it or you hate it or whatever it might be. You don't have to do that. And the one thing that I will say in relation to this is don't try not to ghost your therapist. This is an opportunity for you to share what's really bothering you. So even if it's by email or however it is that you would contact each other, or if it's in a session, which is even better, speaking up for yourself and saying, this isn't working for me, is super, super important. Yes, it's helpful on the therapist side because I don't like being ghosted, because I have been ghosted in the past, and it's kind of, you start to build up a picture of what could have happened. Are they okay? All of these things. But for you, it's about recognizing that it's okay to say that something doesn't work, which a lot of the time people who decide to come to therapy find it really difficult to speak up about the things that may upset somebody else. So in saying all of that, I hope this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about therapy, finding a therapist, any future videos that you have ideas about that you'd like me to explore here. Keep me posted. And on that front, I am going. So see you. Bye.